A Catholic pro-life activist is arrested in connection with an alleged altercation with an abortion escort outside a clinic 1 year ago. And crisis pregnancy centers continue to be targeted. Why isn't the Justice Department doing anything to protect them? Joining me to discuss this and much more, New Jersey Congressman and co-chair of the Pro-Life Caucus, Chris Smith, and CEO of Compass Care Crisis Pregnancy Centers, Reverend Jim Harden. Thank you both for being here. I want to start with this arrest of Mark Houck, who pleaded not guilty to federal charges on Tuesday after the FBI arrested him at his home in Pennsylvania. Now, this arrest concerns an alleged altercation with an abortion escort outside an abortion clinic. Now that was back in October of 2021. Houck's attorney, Peter Breen, has said the case already made its way through the state court process and was thrown out. But the Biden Justice Department took up the matter nearly a year later, and they call it a form of political, or rather, people are calling this a form of political prosecution. Now, 22 members of Congress are demanding an explanation from the Department of Justice. In a press release, Representative Chip Roy of Texas said, quote, Attorney General Merrick Garland oversees an increasingly politicized FBI that seems hell-bent on making examples of average American citizens who don't align politically with the administration. Congressman Smith, what do you make of this arrest in a case that had already been thrown out in state court and the behavior of this Justice Department?
Well, I think we're talking about persecution, not prosecution. They're using their enormous powers to wage kind of a legal war against pro-lifers and people who have traditional values. This Justice Department is egregiously flawed. The prosecutorial discretion that they use is to go after people with whom they disagree with. And that's the big difference here, with whom they disagree with. Justice is supposed to be fair and equal, and not something where you put your hand on the scale in order to promote a certain viewpoint. And there's no oversight whatsoever of this administration under the Democrats. Zero. Thankfully, if we do take control of the House and hopefully the Senate, there will be rigorous oversight, subpoenas that would be handed down, and to get to the bottom of many of these things. And Raymond, as you know, our bill that we've introduced, and Catherine Boris Rogers is my chief co-sponsor, that legislation will require that the Inspector General look into these terrible terroristic attacks that are taking place at pregnancy care centers and give us the information as to this lack of concern when terrorism acts are being committed.
Congressman, in the months following the Supreme Court's decision to return abortion to the states, we've seen 50 incidents of vandalism and targeting of pro-life crisis pregnancy centers across the country. Look, I mean, I've even seen as many as upward of 80 attacks in some reports.
Right.
Now, Jim, one of your Compass Care facilities was firebombed a few months ago. Just last week, the FBI canceled their scheduled analysis of footage from that facility. Why?
Well, they wouldn't tell us why, but 114 days since the firebombing and 0 arrests. Since May 2nd, there have been over, as you say, upwards of 80 different attacks on pro-life pregnancy centers and no arrests. Look, on September 19th, we had to file a suit against the police department just to get our evidence back, our video evidence back, so that our attorneys can start the prosecution process, but they refused to give it to us. And I said to a reporter the day after, I said, it's a little unsettling to come out against the police department and the FBI because we believe the FBI is choosing not to make arrests. And he said, why is it unsettling? And I said, it's because I'm afraid of character assassination. I'm afraid they're going to engage in some kind of reprisal against pro-lifers. And several days later, they go after a dawn raid of a nonviolent pro-life leader in Pennsylvania. It's happening. Instead of just simply robbing us of equal justice under the law, they're now attacking pro-life people because of their ideology.
Congressman, last Tuesday, you introduced a new House bill, Protect Pregnancy Care Centers Act of 2022. If enacted, the bill would require the Justice Department and the Department of Homeland Security to provide Congress with an account of their investigations, if any, into the attacks against these centers. In the bill, you state that, quote, the Justice Department has abdicated its duty and failed to provide justice for victims of violence. Why have we not seen the Department of Justice or the FBI go after the people who've committed violence against the pregnancy centers we were just talking about?
Well, I think it has everything to do with bias against pro-lifers. I mean, the fact that this administration and Biden himself is the abortion president, he and Harris, everything that they do is integrated with the promotion, funding of, and furtherance of the abortion agenda, both domestically and internationally. So when advocates stand up and with the wonderful volunteers and people who are involved with pregnancy care centers are out there helping women through a very, very difficult time, and they love them both, mother and child. They see that as a threat to the abortion business that Planned Parenthood runs so effectively in terms of a moneymaker. And so they not even err, they just go on the side of we're wrong, they're right, and people can do whatever they want. I have been shocked. You know, I'm a great believer in law enforcement. I'm endorsed by all the leaders of whether it's the PBA or FOP. I'm a great believer in law enforcement. But at the very top of the FBI, and sadly with Merrick Garland, we have unfair justice. So it isn't justice at all. It's injustice. And again, they choose to look the other way on the other side. And
Yeah, but aren't all of these attacks punishable under the FACE Act, the Freedom of Access to Clinics Act of 1994, which would include fines and jail time?
Fines, jail time. And again, under FACE, you know, if people use bombs or threat of force, that's different. But these are non-violent individuals who are out there sidewalk counseling, and they throw the book at them and even provoke actions that then gets a reaction. And it's all one-sided.
Congressman, what's been the response of your colleagues to this bill? Are there any Democrats who support it at this point? I mean, it's happening in their districts.
Not a single one. I know every single Republican, I believe, will support it. We already have 30 now co-sponsors. It will grow. We will pass it next year. We might have a tough time in the Senate because of the filibuster, but we will do oversight hearings about this lack of concern for the welfare and well-being of the wonderful people, and I mean wonderful. I've known them. I've been in the pro-life movement for 50 years, along with my wife. The pregnancy care centers are the front lines of saying, we love you both. And to go after them with Molotov cocktails and spray painting horrible things, threats, and to see no response from the Department of Justice, Garland, in my opinion, is acting very dishonorably and with shame in not going after these terroristic threat people that are doing these things.
Reverend, I want you to respond to this, and then Congressman Smith. Are you surprised by the lack of condemnation from the Biden administration? Last Thursday, Vice President Kamala Harris told a group of Democratic attorneys general the following.
You are taking on rightly the crisis pregnancy centers, launching public education campaigns, and in the midst of the vast amount of confusion, the need of you as the truth tellers to sort out fiction from fact and combat misinformation and disinformation, which we all know often creates a situation that is ripe for predatory practices.
Reverend, is that encouraging the targeting of crisis pregnancy centers like yours?
Oh, no, she's actually talking about us. She's actually, those are the words and language that the Jane's Revenge and these pro-abortion politicians are using to attack us. They're talking about how we're, you know, even the Biden administration talks about how, you know, these pregnancy centers are engaging in misinformation or disinformation. And she's not talking to encourage us. She's talking against us. The pro-abortion politicians in charge of the Democratic Party are colluding, and they have the same words as Jane's Revenge, the pro-abortion terrorist group, the same words that they're using together with Elizabeth Warren and all their ilk, and they're colluding with big tech to censor us, which they're doing now. We've got a bunch of attorneys working with us on looking at that. There is there is, Jane's Revenge is that this pro-abortion terrorist group is the Democratic Party's new KKK. And the cross in the front yard is burning down pregnancy centers. And I'm telling you what, the collusion needs to stop. And our attorneys are actually looking into dusting off the third KKK Act of 1871 to suspend habeas corpus because we're being denied equal justice under the law according to the 14th Amendment. And it needs to be brought out. And these people need to be arrested. And I think they're afraid. The reason why they're not making any arrests is because they're afraid that if they make an arrest, people are going to start drawing the dots between big tech and these pro-abortion bad actors, and they're going to swamp a lot of political votes for the Democratic Party in the midterm elections, and they're going to lose their aspirations and go to jail.
Congressman, your take on what you heard Kamala Harris say there. I mean, it's certainly demonizing these crisis pregnancy centers as agents of misinformation and disinformation.
Well, Vice President Harris is not only smearing the good work and the witness for life of the pregnancy care centers, this is incitement. This gives the green light to these terroristic organizations and individuals. Now that Roe has been overturned, and I've long predicted this myself, you'll see a huge manifestation of violence on the part of the pro-abortionists. If you can decapitate or cut off the head of an unborn child, dismember that child, put chemical poisoning into their systems to effectuate an abortion, other kinds of violence are very, very close at hand for them. And again, the front line of the pro-life movement, of all of our concern for the women and the babies, are the pregnancy care centers. So they're out to destroy them by smearing them and by incitement to violence.
Jim, you have a lawsuit against the Amherst Police Department to secure the return of security footage that you handed over to them after the firebombing that took place at your facility. Why did you give them the footage in the first place, and what's the status of the suit?
Yeah, great question. We gave them the video footage on a good faith gesture because the catastrophic damage to our facility after the firebombing was so severe that water damage and the fire damage had the power out. So we could not make a copy. So we gave it to them in good faith to get the investigation going. And the next day we asked to see it. You'd think that would be, common protocol for the victims to be able to see who their attackers are, just to give the police or the investigators some leads. Nope. They refused to let us see it for weeks and weeks on end. And the FBI didn't even take a look at it for 5 weeks, 5 whole weeks before they even, were even interested in looking at it. So now we're having to file, we've asked on multiple occasions, very politely, this is just common sense, let us see our own video, give us a copy, and the answer is always no. And the reason why, they say, is because they're afraid that if they give it back to us, it'll foment violence from the right. Violence from the right. I mean, we're on the right. There's no violence coming from us. And the town attorney representing the town and the police department said the reason, he said, why not? What's so wrong? We're asking what's so wrong with us getting the video back. He said, because, well, you know all the nut jobs basically on the right who are carrying AK-47s and guns, bombing and killing people. He's referring to pro-lifers. He's saying that pro-lifers are terrorists. We're the ones getting firebombed. We're the ones getting shot in the back. We're the ones being robbed of equal justice under the law after 70 attacks and no arrests. What's happening right now is reprehensible, unconscionable, and it needs to stop. And arrests need to be made now.
Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts this summer declared that crisis pregnancy centers should be shut down. Last week, she sent a letter to pro-life pregnancy center network Heartbeat International, accusing the group of, quote, luring pregnant people, many in desperate situations, to affiliate CPC facilities by using a variety of false and misleading tactics and collecting personal health care information, which may be used to put women's health and freedom to choose in jeopardy and to put them and their health care providers at risk of criminal penalties. What do you make of those accusations, Reverend, and your thoughts on how this political movement, the narrative we're beginning to see, might impact the services you provide to girls and young women in difficult straits?
Well, I would say that Senator Elizabeth Warren does not understand the nature of what it means to serve a patient, a woman facing unplanned pregnancy. Of course, you've got to collect information. Everybody does. In fact, the Obama administration under Obamacare requires an electronic medical record system be kept by anybody who's requiring payment for services. Pregnancy centers do not require payment for services. We provide all of our services for free. And so she's concerned that we don't have an electronic medical record system. But in fact, Heartbeat International is promoting an electronic medical record system. I don't speak for Heartbeat International, but they do great work. And what we need to be concerned about, and what Elizabeth Warren needs to be concerned about, is the abortion industry covering up child sex crimes, like we saw with that poor 10-year-old girl in Ohio that was transported across state lines into Indiana. Her confidential information was spread out all over the media. How did the media get that confidential medical information? They got it from the abortionist. Who's violating the confidentiality of patients? Who's putting patients at risk? It's the abortion industry. It's the billion-dollar abortion industry, and they're looking to protect them. They're not looking to protect women. They're looking to insulate the abortion industry, doctors who perform abortions, as well as the pharmaceutical companies, from any liability, because they know that abortion harms women and it's not true medicine.
Reverend James Harden of Compass Care Pregnancy Services, Congressman Chris Smith, who had to run off for a vote. We thank you both for being here.